welcome to episode 294 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans' podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm joined here to discuss a game that we first discussed, I want to say 5 years ago, 4 years ago, a while ago. But I was not on those episodes, but I am on this episode. But who's joining me, and for what? Let's answer the first question first. It's Zach Wilkerson.
Hi there.
And Alana Hagues.
Hello.
Now, Alana, some time ago, I will not bother to look up what year, we did some episodes on Nier, the popular Square-Enix action RPG that was, I mean, depending on how much you care about Dragon Guard continuity, something like the third or fourth game in its extended universe.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. It gets a bit complicated, but it's like a direct sequel to one of the endings of the original Dragon Guard. It was 2016. It was April 2016. I'll remember that because it was my very first appearance on Retro.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a pretty easy date for me to remember, yeah.
That was your first one? Not the, was the FF6 episode before or after that?
I think we recorded it around the same time, but it went up a few months later.
Got it.
That was the
Okay.
first episode we were on together, but yeah.
Right. All right. That sounds about right. But regardless, I was not on those episodes, but I think I did edit them, so it was very confusing navigating the plot stuff going on, and I forgot a lot of it. But this is my first time playing Nier. I played the recent Nier Replicant remake for PS4, and Zach, you were not part of RPG Fan in 2017, but this is not your first run of Nier. Is that correct?
That's true. I played the original Nier for the PS3 maybe about a month after we recorded our Automata episodes. So like March of last year, right around when the pandemic started, interestingly.
Okay, so we're all different degrees of when we experienced the original Nier. I tried playing it before I even started podcasting. It was let's say the mid 2010s. I was trying to clear out things from the old PS3 backlog and started Nier, but did not get very far. I don't even think I met Grimoire Vice because it just did not grab me in its opening moments of whacking sheep and whatnot. But this is an episode all about Nier Replicant. It's going to be in the context of the recent remake. But we'll compare it to the old one. We won't go through it plot point by plot point. That is not really what I want to do. I just want to talk about our thoughts and feelings on this very unique, very weird game, which you, Alana, reviewed for the website a month or two ago, right?
Yeah, right when it came out.
And I mean, you had to play it in a truncated experience. You probably only had like 10 days or 2 weeks to finish it, right? Was that a bit of a struggle?
Which is more than normal, to be honest. Not really, because like I remembered pretty much the structure of it, and I knew what I needed to do. Obviously, there were some new bits, which were the things that I was very conscious to hit. Luckily, all of the new sections are mandatory, except the extra ending, which I might not have even got had I not known that it existed because it's tucked away. But yeah, it wasn't too bad an experience. I was just mostly thrilled to get back to this world and these characters again, because in preparation for Replicant coming out, I'd also replayed Automata a couple of weeks before I got my copy of Replicant, so I was ready to go, basically, and go I did.
And again, I don't remember my experience with OG Nier very closely because, again, it was maybe less than 2 hours. But one thing that surprised me was just how similar they felt. I know that Nier Replicant is remade to be more like Automata, like sort of made in its image somewhat, with like having the context of how popular Automata was and trying to have the two games connected a little bit more obviously. But was original Nier, did it feel the same? Like, because I remember it being so much clunkier.
It was clunkier, yeah.
But again, that was a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't realize the connection of Nier, the main character Nier, sprinting around the overworld with a book flying over him while wielding swords, being so similar to what happens in Automata, because it's like the image of 2B running with her drone over her shoulder and Nier running with his flying book over his shoulder was a sort of a stylistic similarity that I really never made a connection to. Again, because I know extremely little about how the original Nier feels. But Yeah, the games are obviously connected in that one is a sequel of the other, but there was more gameplay connections and more stylistic connections than I understood. And me again playing Nier Automata for the first time in I guess it was early 2020, and then playing this a little over a year later, the through line was stronger than I thought it would be. Is
I
that?
think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's more of a retroactive thing, because certainly, like, not to say that there aren't tons of, like, really obvious connections, because obviously in Automata you have the library inside the tower, you've got all of some of the weapon stories relating back to Nier and some of the other characters in Automata back to Nier, but Replicant has got a few tweaks to it that make it a little bit more connected to its sequel. Like, some of the areas have been slightly redesigned, so like, you know, outside the Lost Shrine you can very visibly see some of the like buildings and the pipes that are in the City of Ruins in Automata, and inside the junkyard or the junk heap, part of the factory looks like the inside of the copied factory or the abandoned factory in Automata. And the Vice thing you pointed out was also added in Replicant. Vice did not float out by you unless you fought, you were in combat. He disappeared outside of combat and in towns. So yeah, there was something else they added. But yeah, I think the through line is really important, because I think the intended audience is probably a lot of people have played Automata and Automata only because they may not have had a PlayStation 3, or they were put off by the bad word of mouth that a lot of critics gave the original. It's a little bit undeserved. It's better than people said it was, and there was a lot of like anti-Japanese RPG discussion and rhetoric going around in 2010 when the original Nier came out, so it immediately like, put people off. And like Yoko Taro and Cavia Studios, who are the people behind Drakengard and the original Nier, they had a bit of a rep anyway for like making games that were like ambitious but didn't quite play well. Like, I think if anyone's played a Drakengard game, they could probably attest to that more than with Nier. But yeah, Cavia were defunct after Drakengard 3, which is why many of the staff like stuck around with Taro and moved on with Platinum to do Automata. So yeah.
Right, the kind of fan you're describing is like 80% of what I am. I knew Nier by reputation, that a lot of people loved it, but there was repetitious parts of it, and it was a little bit messy, and that was also my perception of the Drakengard games. Like, there are cool parts, and this is ambitious, but it's messy, and GameSpot gave it a 6 out of 10. That was kind of the reputation that I felt with Cavia, which probably why I was reluctant to try any of their games. But I'm not someone that was slagging JRPGs around 2010, I promise. Yeah. But my interest in Nier was hugely amplified by playing Nier Automata, and this Nier Replicant remake for PS4 was the perfect opportunity for me to revisit it. And even though I even thought about playing Nier last year, let's say like not long before the Replicant remake was announced. But Zach, you were a little bit more, let's say, impulsive than I was, and you played Nier Gestalt or Nier PS3 not long after playing Nier Automata. Like, what were a few things that jumped out at you between since you've played both versions a year or so apart, in terms of differences between the two?
I mean, I think that all the things that Alana discussed, I think, are all significant, but I think it's just like the way the game feels. I actually I didn't have as much of a problem with the combat in the original Nier as most people. Like, it wasn't complicated or overly ambitious, and certainly wasn't as smooth as Platinum, and this version isn't either. Like, you can tell that Platinum, like, they tried to make it feel more like Automata, but it's still not Automata. I mean, like, there's not the dodging mechanics and things like that feel very Platinum. So that's probably what struck me most. And I actually just think that because of the changes they made, like, they didn't make the bosses any harder, and the bosses were amazing in the original Nier, and they're the same here. The game just feels a lot easier than the original Nier. I struggled a little bit with the original Nier, and I don't know if it's just because, like, I just played the original Nier last year, but this time I did not. But yeah, I mean, I think that it felt like the same game to me, despite the fact that there's a different protagonist technically. It still felt like Nier to me.
And did they? I know a few of the story changes that they made, and we'll get to those later. But was there any major script changes or voice work changes just in the parts that are in both versions?
I mean, there certainly are some changes, and I'll let Alana talk about some of the other ones, but it's mostly smoothing out. But there are some. I mean, the mermaid sequence, which we'll talk about later, is pretty significant new content. And there are things that are added. But yeah, in terms of the script, there are definitely some significant changes, but not anything that misses what it was doing originally. And obviously there are some script changes as well because of the fact that it's young Nier instead of dad Nier.
Oh yeah,
this
of course.
time around.
Yeah,
They had to record new dialogue for Nier himself, at least.
Well, they re-recorded all of it. It's all re-recorded voice work. Yeah, the entire script is basically reworked. It's just ironed out, and it's a really good localization. My favorite change, actually, before I get to like any of the significant ones that I maybe want to bring up, like when you obviously we're jumping right into the plot here. At the time skip, at the time skip when you bring back Kaine from her petrification, I can't remember what she says in Replicant, but she's a lot nicer to Nier, and in the original Nier, she tells him, "You look like and she doesn't say that to him in Replicant, so they toned that down a little bit, but rest assured, Kaine swears a hell of a lot more in this version than she did in the original.
It's glorious.
It's so good.
Yeah, Kaine's crudeness is just completely delightful the whole way through. In fact, I think that the quartet of Nier, Grimoire Weiss, Kaine, and Emile is one of the great RPG parties of the past 15 years.
Easily one of my favorites ever.
Yeah, it's I almost wish that they were together for more of the story, because really you only get the full complement of them for, let's say, most of the part 2 story, because again, just so we can throw around terms without confusing listeners. Listeners, I assume that you have played this game, because we are going to spoil all of it. And if you don't care about spoilers and haven't played Nier, we'll go into a brief explainer to make this less confusing. You play through part 1 of the story. Then a major event happens where Yona is abducted, and then you have a 5-year time skip. And then at that 5-year time skip, Emile and Nier go on a brief adventure together, and then they free Kaine from her petrification. And then the part 2 story is those 4 main characters sort of continuing a story where they have to assemble a stone emblem to open up the Shadow Lord's castle and then defeat the Shadow Lord in his castle to rescue Yona. So part 1 is young Nier, part 2 is assembling the stone emblem, and then you get your ending based on circumstances and how many times you've played through the game after defeating the Shadow Lord in his castle. So, me going into this game... all right. Well, okay. I'm going to back up a little bit. This game takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, but they are not hiding that post-apocalypse from you. At the very beginning, you play a prologue with Nier and Yona struggling in what appear to be, modern human ruins against shade monsters. And to sort of protect his sister, Nier picks up a black book and uses the powers of the black book to stave off the monsters. And then there's a time skip of, what was it, hundreds of years, thousands of years, into a somewhat idyllic world where an identical pair of young people, Nier and Yona, are caring for each other in this small town. So immediately, they're not trying to hide a lot from you yet. Like you're definitely in a post-apocalypse where there are ruins of what would be, say, modern Japan, and the people within the world are aware that there was a different civilization hundreds of years ago with things like bridges and train tracks still lying around. So they're not hiding that from the player, but exactly what's going on in this world is definitely hidden from the player until you reach some endings. So I thought that was an interesting choice for how they contextualize this version of the apocalypse, but how much of a loop are you thrown for at the very beginning of the game? Playing through that prologue and then going off to collect mutton from local sheep when the main story begins. Like how much? I don't know. I was a little shocked at that transition. How do you guys feel about that?
I was surprised the first time, for sure. I mean, obviously I knew it was coming the second time around because I'd already played it, but yeah, I remember thinking well, what's going on? Why can't I see the parking lot? Why is Yona more sick or less sick, and who are these people? Like, I just had questions and questions and questions, and even up until I got Grimoire Vice, it's very interesting to me this time around that actually, how did I not notice that the two books were different colours in the beginning of the game? Like, you have obviously, you have the black book right at the beginning, Grimoire Noir, and it's Grimoire Vice you're going to pick up literally within an hour of the game. So it's like, I didn't even add 2 and 2 together that early on.
I did figure that out at least. I'm like, okay, this is hundreds of years later, so this is probably not exactly the same boy, but I know that Nier Automata has, a cyclical nature to its world. So maybe this is the boy has lived with his sister in a never-ending cycle of finding a book like a thousand times for all I know. But and this time it's white. So like I did not know the exact nature of the world going in, even though I had some ideas from playing Automata ahead of time, and also so that was a surprise. And the other, not really a shock, but the other sort of thing that threw me for a loop is how Devila and Popula are the sort of the mayors or city managers of your idyllic little town,
yeah.
and I definitely knew not to trust them.
Right.
Yeah, of course. You've got that context.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in Automata, they actually... The two versions of Devila and Popola you meet are the ones who tell the story about these two versions of Devila and Popola.
Right.
So, and having played Automata 3 times before I put this, it's like, oh, I know who these people are.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a spoiler in and of itself,
And I mean, Nier Automata is about androids. I knew that there was a Devila and Popola android in Nier Automata, and they mentioned other Devilas and Popolas before them. So I'm like, I knew that these Devila and Popola, that this Devila and Popola in Nier Replicant were probably androids. And was this a village of androids, or are they like android shepherds of humans? I wasn't totally sure, but I did not trust them for the whole game because of advanced knowledge, which is a little unfair of me. But a lot of the beginning of Nier 1 is, or let's say the part 1 of the story is Nier. Yona is sick. Nier is looking for a way to maybe cure her sickness, and he's doing odd jobs around town. And it is almost side quest the RPG. Like there's very little story thrust. You're like, oh, I read about a flower that might cure her. Let's go collect the flower. Oh, we need to make a delivery over to Seafront Town. Let's go to Seafront Town. And it's events strung together like that, that introduce Nier, the character Nier, not the game Nier, to the surroundings around him, and give the player like some familiarity with the world and its characters. And over the course of that beginning half, you do meet Kaine and Emile, just two, again, perfect companions for an RPG. Kaine is dressed in a negligee, wields 2 swords, and is very rough around the edges and physically imposing, because she can leap around and slice and dice evil shades as well as anything I've ever seen. And Emile is a precocious person with the appearance of a young boy, maybe aged 10 or so, but he has the unfortunate curse of anyone he looks at turns into stone, so he's permanently blindfolded, and lives with his butler in an isolated mansion. And you meet Kaine near the beginning of part 1 and Emile towards the end of part 1, but they are your 2 closest companions for most of the game, alongside Grimoire Weiss, a very, very sassy talking book. And Alana, I was surprised when you said that Weiss doesn't fly over your shoulder in the original Nier, because that is the image I have of this game, is Nier with a sword with his book flying over him. That's very indelible to me now.
Yeah, it's only in combat he pops out, but the banter's still there in the original, so it's not like there's no like back and forth, because I think that's what really makes this game, is like the interactions between all these characters, like all the time. Like, it doesn't matter what's going on, they'll comment on what's going on, or they'll joke around, or they'll talk, or they'll exchange, or they'll bicker, and it's like, it's just like real life. It's very, very lovely. I really love this cast to bits.
Yeah, I mean, Kaine is one of my favorite characters in video games. I mean, and we'll get into this more when we talk about Ending E with Kaine, but I think that the text adventure stuff that you see with her, I think, is really fascinating in terms of like painting her. And she is so unapologetic about who she is. And I know that, people talk about the way that Kaine dresses a lot on the internet, because of course they do. And it's Taro, so of course they do, and of course he did. But I like the way that's used here, and I know that people can maybe use it as an excuse, but like it is a way of like her embracing it, because we haven't talked about the fact that she's intersex, and that causes some her to be bullied when she's a child. And just the way she embraces it, and the way that she and Emil's sort of like kindness like bounce off of each other is amazing. And Emil's story, knowing him from Automata, and knowing sort of how his story ends in Automata makes him so incredibly tragic, but also such a beautiful character. I adore this cast.
I think that was a very thing of its era. Like the original Nier came out, I think, in 2010, and games around then there was a lot of banter. Like there was games like BioShock and Mass Effect, where like environmental storytelling with dialogue, sort of non-immediate dialogue, like background dialogue while exploring, became sort of a signature thing in the PSV 60 generation of games. And Nier is just an incredible example of that, because it's exactly that right time, again, a few years after those games I mentioned. But the writing is so good. And with how sort of determined Nier is, how sassy Grimoire Weiss is, how like crude and straightforward Kaine is, and how just like syrupy, kind and sweet Emil is, it makes for some awesome dialogue. Like I loved listening to these characters talk to each other for 30 plus hours.
Yeah, one of my favorite interactions with them is when they're at the top of the shrine, and I think this is, oh god, I don't remember when this happens. I think it's right at the beginning of the second half of the game, and like Emil's talking about how he likes camping outside with Kaine, and Kaine goes, "I've got an image to maintain." And I'm like,
you missed one of her words there, Alana.
Yeah, I did. This is a PG-13 podcast. I suppose if I feel inclined, we'll get the censors out. It's fine.
If we directly quote Kaine too often, we will have to like lift the child-friendly moniker from this episode.
I mean, literally once I think would be enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you all hit it on the head, really. Like, I think I just love how different they are. Like, you've got like your Mass Effects and that, where you've got like different, like everyone's very different in Mass Effect, but there's something very unique about the cast in Nier, in that, like, at the end of the day, one of them is just a normal human, and then the rest, you've got a book, an intersex woman, and a gay boy who is like he's a skeleton and a biological weapon as well. So you've got like, I don't know, where else are you going to get that from? And like, yeah, well, they just
skipping ahead a little bit. I mean, Kaine was exiled from her town because of her intersex nature. They called her all kinds of awful things. And then during a shade attack on her grandmother's home, she became possessed by a shade, which contributes to her incredible strength, but also makes her half monster in a way. And Emil, who had been alive for hundreds of years, probably since before the apocalypse, was part of a group of children who were experimented upon, and where Emil and his sister were sort of a matching pair, where his sister was turned into a biological weapon, and Emil was turned into a different kind of weapon to counteract his sister, should his sister lose control, which is, again, like, her sister was a dangerous biological weapon, and Emil was given this petrification modification so he could petrify his sister in case the lab lost control of her. And there's a giant hidden lab underneath his mansion house, and I think it's implied that the butler that takes care of him was like a caretaker android.
Yes, yeah, he is.
Yes.
Yeah,
right.
It's very obvious. There's like a bit where he's robotic.
Yeah, exactly. Where like his memory skips or something, and he has to. I don't remember the exact moment, but it was implied fairly heavily. So like there's weird circumstances around these characters, and again, in Grimoire Weiss is a floating book with magic powers who doesn't remember what he is or why he has these magic powers. And before they even meet Kaine and Emil, Nier and Weiss figure out that they might be able to cure Yona's sickness if Weiss gains his full power back, because of a folkloric song that they discover in town being sung by Devila. And me realizing that Popola was the one who gave Yona the idea of visiting the shrine where Vice lives, and Devola giving them the idea of finding all of the words of power to give Vice's full power back. It's like, oh, they've really been manipulating it all from the beginning.
I mean, and they make it a lot more clear in this version
Yes.
too. Those conversations in Route C, which are totally new to Route C and actually make Route C like not as much of a slog as it was the first time, are make that explicit. But one of the things I want to pick on that you were talking about there, Mike, it's one of the things that I like about this game a lot. You're talking about like these characters like mysterious pasts, like the things that happened to Emil, why Grimoire Weiss is the way that he is, and even like sort of like the whole history of the world. Like even if you've played Drakengard, like knowing how they got from A to B is not clear. And if you like go read Grimoire Nier, which is like the collection of short stories and all this other stuff, like you can figure out the lore, but the game doesn't really care about that.
I figured out some of it. Like if you read the documents that you get near the end of ending A, basically one of the endings in Drakengard transported a giant colossus and a giant dragon to the real world. And and those two created huge destruction and destroyed each other. But the remnants of the Colossus created a horrible disease that caused mankind to start to go extinct, and the remnants of the dragon was able to sort of create a new field of magic technology, which created the nature of magic in the world of Nier. So mankind started to die out because of an apocalypse brought on by events of Drakengard.
Right. And personally, of course, I think all that stuff's like really interesting. But I don't actually think the characters do. And you don't need to know. So my point is, like, I think that I like that all that stuff is stuff that you can dig into, but it doesn't really change the emotional core of the game in any dramatic way. And I kind of like how unless you do some serious digging, and of course I'm a huge Nier fan, so I don't know, I'm going to spend some time on the lore. But it doesn't, my understanding of the lore, which is much greater now than it was the first time I played it, doesn't change the emotional impact of it, and the game world builds in a way that I really like. It's like, hey, here's some vague hints, the way that people would really probably experience this world. It doesn't feel the need to explain everything, even with Ending E, which we'll talk about. It doesn't really explain Ending E totally. It does a little bit. But I like that. I like that because I think it allows us and it encourages us to focus on the characters themselves, which we'll get to more of my later thoughts. But I really like that.
Yeah, no, I never felt like I was being bogged down by lore. Everything that I went into a brief explainer on a second ago is in the text of the game, but it took me 5 minutes. This isn't an exhaustive codex that they encourage you to check. I mean, when I played Tactics Ogre for the podcast, I guess 2 years ago, maybe time is
like a year and a
it was
half
it was a year. It was only about a year ago. See, I've completely lost understanding of the passage of time. But I thought that game had a little bit too much lore buried in menus, and I did not feel that way about Nier Replicant. The moment to moment drama is a lot, and it's great, but there's a little bit of background lore in the game that maybe clarify a few things that I didn't think was bad. But sometimes I do think lore encyclopedias in video games do get bad. This didn't hit there though.
Yeah, and you only really start to get the important information right at the end of Route A, when you've already formed those connections, and it's suddenly you've suddenly got this dilemma of, oh my god, look at all of this information about the world, look what we've done, but I love these characters kind of thing, and you've got that weight on you. But yeah, I don't think it overrides anything, because yeah, they're just special. I think the way that the game is written and the way that it's paced and the way that they build up the characters and the way Route B gives you more into Kaine, and Route C you get a little bit more of Emil as well, because you get a little bit of extra text at the end of Route C, I think, for him. Yeah, it really plays on your emotions, but not in a way that feels like it's kind of begging or kind of lying to you or something like that. I don't know, but I think it's earned wholly and entirely, very naturally. They're just fantastic. I could talk 2 hours about just those two characters, let alone Nier and Vice. Give me 2 hours on Emil and Kaine, and I can go for it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Emil is introduced a little bit late in the part one of the story before the time skip, but He dies, sort of dies during one of during in the end game portion in the Shadow Lord's castle, but you get a scene, I think, at the end of Ending B where you realize that really it was only his body was destroyed, but his head is intact and his mind is intact, and he's finding a way to rebuild himself. And that was like seeing him die multiple times and then seeing him survive was an emotional gut punch followed by emotional relief that felt completely completely earned. This is sometimes stories will twist themselves for the sake of twisting themselves, and I'll just think, where did this come from? Why did they do this? They're only doing it for the sake of doing it. But for Nier, every moment of emotional drama and every choice that they did in the story, other than some repetition elements, felt completely earned, and basically Yoko Taro played my brain like a violin, messing with me.
He did.
Messing with me here. But we've been talking about endings A, B, C, D, E, just to give a framework for referring to later in the episode. When you beat the game, you beat part 1, beat part 2, get ending A. Then to get ending B, you load your save file. You load your clear data. You start at the stone emblem phase of the game, which is again say the 60% mark, or maybe the 50% mark, and you clear that part again. But this time, you see monster dialogue. You'll see the bosses get cutscenes and learn a little bit about each of them before fighting them, and also get more information on the relationship that Kaine has with the shade living inside of her. And that made me wonder. Maybe this is obvious, and I'm just a dummy, or maybe I'm stretching this too far. Is the context of this Kaine has always been able to understand the shades?
No. I mean, yeah, I think that during this, because she does some things and says some things during Route A that you probably wouldn't 100% understand. So, but she's always been able to understand them as long as we've been with her. But I think it's only as long as Tyran has been inside of her.
Thank you. I briefly forgot his name, so thanks for setting that up. But that I wasn't sure if they were giving us an omniscient player's view of what the shades were saying, or because ending B is sort of from Kaine's perspective, now we can understand the shades because she's always been able to understand the shades. Does that make sense?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she's always been able to understand them. Yeah.
Right, and that gives you just a lot of weird context, because at the very end of ending A, you learn that that humans were almost entirely wiped out thousands of years ago. But thanks to technology from the dragon, their solution for the plague from the Colossus was that humans can remove their souls from their bodies. Then, while their souls were removed and their bodies were dying out, make perfect android replacements for their human bodies and reinsert the soul into a new android body. And Devila and Popula were sort of, I said shepherd before, and I think that's basically accurate, even though the sheep in this game play a different role. Am I to understand that there are hundreds of Devilas and Populas all over the world cultivating groups of androids so they can accept souls later?
I'm not sure that there are androids. Are they?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, we'll say replicants. Yeah, the souls, which when they become corrupted, they turn into shades. Are gestalts, and their shells, their human seeming shells, are replicants. And Nier himself and Yona herself are replicants. So, but are there colonies of replicants led by android shepherds all over the world, or is this the only one in the world?
I mean, Automata indicates that there were.
There's multiple,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I think that, based on other lore stuff, that is the case. But yeah, Automata basically confirms that in the text adventure toward the end of the game.
Right, and some of the Gestalts, the former human souls, have sort of lost themselves and become monstrous because of a flaw in the programming of the Gestalt separation technology. But a lot of them are, still humans that remember being human. So, the boss Gretel, the sort of armored guardian near the beginning of part 2. like starting to befriend and respect the Gestalt under their command, and her pleading. I'm going to say Gretel, her, just because that's the name Gretel, and her pleading with you to not kill her new friends is it completely puts that boss fight in a completely different context. And maybe the most dramatic one, or one of them, is the mermaid sequence that was added for the Replicant remake, where you're fighting this monstrous kraken-like shade, but you realize that this shade that was terrorizing the town had just fallen in love with a human, which I guess is a replicant. Like, had fallen in love with a human and was just expressing their love in the worst way possible, like trying to become human herself by eating humans, and in her attempt to replicate singing, like is devastating the landscape with screams. It's messed up. Like basically, Nier's belief that he needs to wipe out all the shades to protect his family, and with the shades themselves being human souls just trying to survive to become human again, is just the most tragic of misunderstandings.
Wouldn't you do that, though?
Of course I would.
If your daughter likes, yeah, exactly.
If I was a replicant in Nier's position, I would think of the shades as enemies, and if I was a former human that had become a shade, I would be trying to survive. Like these. At your very first run through the game, especially since shades are basically just shadowy looking monsters, it is very, very easy to get to live with the context. Nier is trying to protect his sister or rescue his sister, and the shades are monsters that for some reason want his sister. But now with this context, knowing that shades are separated human souls, and the Shadow Lord is Nier's own shade or Nier's own Gestalt, who is trying to revive his own sister, and the Shadow Lord is the human Nier from the prologue who picked up the Black Book. Like understanding who the Shadow Lord is and what the shades are just makes everything more tragic. Where I don't think this game has a real hero or a villain. It's just it's just a post-apocalypse that, in trying to rebuild itself, is destroying itself.
Right. I mean, I think that what's interesting to me is that I think even if Nier was able to hear the shades, I don't think that would change anything that he does. Not a single thing. Because he loves his sister. And he's decided that that's what he needs. And I think that, we're implicated in that a little bit too, because we do know. In Route C, we've already seen that it happened before, and we're going to keep doing it. And of course, it's a video game, so drawing that comparison is a little trite maybe. But, I think that, when, Popola, who's like calm and kind, even in the moments when she's explaining to you what the reality is, like when she just like completely loses her mind after you kill Devila. So yeah, I don't think there are any heroes or villains, and I think that this game sort of rejects the notion of heroes and villains. But yeah, I mean, I think that it makes it tragic, but I think that what's maybe more tragic is that we keep doing it anyway, because we just don't care. I was especially true in Ending E when I got to play as Kaine, and I just like went out and killed shades for fun for like an hour.
Yeah,
I mean, amazing to play as. But yeah, I didn't care, and he doesn't care. He wouldn't care.
That damn Yoko Taro makes video games in part to like have gamers hate themselves. And excuse me for using the word gamers. Like, he knows that people will play this game and play through multiple endings to see everything, because a lot of games have multiple endings or systems like that. But he wants you to make the player suffer and feel bad about themselves with every playthrough. But and does that by having us learn more about the world and how most of this suffering is misunderstanding. And every important character in this game believes they're doing the right thing, but it's just everything is making everything worse. And I think that part of the it's not really the problem, but like part of the conflict of the plot is that the replicants stopped being empty shells and started developing free will. And Devila and Popola and androids like them also, in their way, started developing free will. And the context of, replicants replicants being more than just puppets is and then the gestalts, the souls turning into shades because of a flaw in the technology, just sort of made everything spiral out of control. And Devila and Popola, who at first seemed like caring individuals, then seemed like soulless robots, and then after you kill Devila, Popola losing her mind because all she had was her sister, as her rock and her companion for over 1,000 years, made her completely lose her mind. Like, all of that clashing together just creates a whole emotional artificial intelligence mess, and that's what Yoko Taro lives for, I think. Like, he wants players to feel bad about what they're doing in the game, but continue doing it anyway. Sorry, that's been bottling up in me for a few weeks now. I finished this game in early June, and I've been thinking about it a lot.
There's one thing I'm going to pick on that you said there. You're talking about misunderstandings, and I'm not sure that I would use the term misunderstanding. I actually think that Nier does understand, right? I mean, like, he just doesn't care. I guess. So to me, that's what makes this game interesting. Like, I feel like a lot of video games are like, oh, like, we just like we both want what's best for the world. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking of 1,000 JRPGs where even the bad guy like wants what's best for the world, but like nobody, except for maybe Devil and Popola, sort of, but like, really, is that best for the world to restore Gestalt to the replicants? Like, that's just a directive.
But also, I think, like, because in Nier Automata they mentioned that one pair of Devil Popolas sort of betrayed the world, and obviously that's
these two.
Yeah, that's these two. And is it because they sort of accelerated the plan by giving Nier these resources and directing him to Grimoire Weiss and forcing the Shadow Lord's hand a little bit? Am I misunderstanding that?
I think that's how I would interpret it. Yeah, or just the fact that they led him on, or
It's a good question. I mean, I've always gotten the impression that by allowing the Shadow Lord to die, who was like the first Gestalt who could like control his emotions, like, he was basically maintain his sense of self, by leading people to him to kill him. But I also don't necessarily see that as a betrayal, right? Like, I'm not sure. I always assumed, to me, like, that it was Popola losing her mind that essentially is the betrayal, but I don't really actually know how that would work. Like,
well, the thing is, I don't think they were leading him to kill the Shadow Lord. I thought that because I mean, otherwise, why would they stop you when you're in the Shadow Lord's castle and directly oppose you, instead of just let it happen? I thought that they were empowering Nier, motivating him with what happens to Yona, maybe on the side baiting the Shadow Lord into abducting Yona, and with their end goal being forcing the Nier and the Shadow Lord into combat, but we're also hoping for the Shadow Lord to win. Like, I thought they wanted the Shadow Lord to win so the Shadow Lord could try to possess his replicant.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, the Shadow Lord is obviously one of the original Gestalts, but isn't Yona patient zero? Wasn't she the very first one and she failed or something? Like, because you don't see, I think I'm misremembering now, but, like, I'm sure, like, Yona in particular was the very, very, very first subject, but, yeah, I don't remember quite enough, unfortunately, about that part. That's not explained in-game.
Yeah, I read that on some wiki at some point. I don't remember either.
Yeah.
If not the first subject, then at least human Nier and human Yona were early subjects, and Gestalt Nier, the Shadow Lord, became strong enough or self-actualized enough, or maybe had assistance from Grimoire Noir, like became the first, or the two of them became the first Gestalts really capable of re-entry into their replicants. Right?
Yeah, possibly.
So I thought that Devila and Popola were accelerating the experiment by sort of leading Nier and the Shadow Lord to each other, but intending for the Shadow Lord to win, but Nier had become too powerful and destroys Devila, Popola, and the Shadow Lord instead. Is my interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable, but I guess that to me then, it doesn't necessarily explain why Devila and Popola are so, like, the models are so ostracized. Like, that just seems like it's not a betrayal, it's just like bad judgment.
Yeah, well, that probably is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Right.
it's not maybe not even bad judgment. Maybe it's just maybe I'm thinking into it too much. But maybe like the people who formed Yoha or whoever wanted to perpetuate this lie that they did do something wrong and that they should be ostracized for some reason.
Yoha
build
might
up this
be,
false narrative about these two androids and then, you know, force them to atone by doing things for other androids and feeling guilt for the rest of their like rebuilt existence or whatever.
Is it crazy for me to think that maybe Yorha was formed by the world's Devilas and Popolas?
There is an explanation for how Yorha was formed, and it's not that.
All right.
It involves 9S, interestingly.
Yes.
All right, but this isn't quite an episode about Nier Automata, even though we've talked plenty about it. But again, there's a lot of connections between them, both from sort of site to site changes. The Forest of Myth in Nier Replicant is clearly becomes the forest area adjacent to the amusement park in Nier Automata, and you can make sort of just place to place comparisons like that. I think Seafront is the port city area in Nier Automata as well.
Yeah,
and of course the deserts from the two games correspond to each other. But like even the moment to moment parts of the plot were I thought pretty interesting. The desert civilization in Nier Replicant is by a people who wear masks all the time, are governed by completely arcane sets of rules. But you can and speak a completely different language, but you can understand each other with Grimoire Weiss acting as a bit of a translator. But they are such a peculiar city that it felt like a fascinating plot moment. The 2 or 3 times you have important quest points in that city, and this is connecting to something else. The weapons in this game are stories in their own right, where every time you find a new weapon, you get a few paragraphs of a story, and every time you upgrade the weapon, you gain a few more story bits. And one of the weapons explains how the desert city was formed. Did you read that one?
Mm-hmm. I read them all at some point.
Okay.
I definitely didn't upgrade all the weapons because I'm not a total masochist.
I upgraded a lot of them,
yeah.
and that's a problem I have. Again, I upgraded a couple to max that I used the whole game, but like there's one weapon that is basically the story of Kill Bill that I liked quite a bit. One weapon that explains how I forget the name of the desert city again. What is it?
A facade.
Facade, of course. The one weapon that explains why the people of Facade developed complicated rules in a complicated language. Another weapon that just that tells the story of all of the labyrinth weapons are about bulls or minotaurs. Mm-hmm. And one of them, the labyrinth song, I think, is one of the weapons I used a lot in one of my runs. Told the story about a sad minotaur that everyone was afraid of, that just wanted to help the people living around it. It's just like a lot of the weapon upgrade mini stories were just beautiful and heartbreaking in their own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they weren't in the original Nier either. They were added in for
You're
Replicant.
Kidding.
Yeah.
No,
I'm not
no
kidding.
floating book, no sad weapon upgrade stories, no mermaid side quest.
I mean, the mermaid side quest didn't exist in the game, but it existed in Grimoire Nier, so it was a real thing. It's a little bit more elaborated here, but yeah.
So are you telling me that the best character in the game, Red Bagman, survives the events of Nier Gestalt?
Red Bagman isn't even in the original.
He's not. He's not in it. Nope.
Oh yeah. God, this is worse than the boat song not being in Sega CD Luna.
I'm actually not going to agree with you this time, Mike.
I mean, the big side quest in Seafront. I'm not getting that name wrong, am I?
It's correct.
No, you're right.
Seafront. Okay, I knew it was I knew it wasn't Seaside. That's Mario RPG. But I mean, Seafront Village is in original Nier, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only two things that are like wholesale added, except for a couple scenes, are the mermaid sequence, which just isn't there. Like, you know how like you have like all those options, like, hey, go here or go here or go here. Like that's just like never presented. Mm-hmm. And then obviously ending E is not there either. But otherwise, this game is superior in basically every way, unless you like strongly prefer Dad Nier, which I think you're wrong.
I mean, I did get to briefly control Dad Nier in some of the free DLC in the PS4 version, because they it's semi-required if you want to see all the endings. But basically, you enter a dream diary of sorts that has you play through some almost arcade-like stages as Dad Nier. So you at least get some Dad Nier dialogue, and again, listeners, maybe we didn't mention this at all. In the original 2010 Nier, there was 2 versions in Japanese: Gestalt and Replicant. In Gestalt, Nier is a grizzled middle-aged man protecting his daughter Yona, and in Replicant, Nier is a teenager protecting his sister Yona. And worldwide, only the Gestalt version with Dad Nier was released in other languages. But for this remake, they're only releasing the Teenage Nier version worldwide, and Dad Nier is just available in this in a DLC episode.
Yeah, the whole story behind that is fascinating to me. Like according to Taro in interviews, like he was told like, hey, it'll appeal more to Western audiences if you have like a really old, very ugly man as your main character, which I totally don't agree with. But I actually just think that, to me, like, this is just better having like young Nier, because like I feel like, especially at the time shift, in like the changes you can see, like, I don't know, he's like grizzled to start in original Nier, and like he just like is still grizzled, and you know,
he has like an eye patch, doesn't he?
Yeah,
That's
right.
it.
Yeah, he has an eye patch, and he can control 2-handed swords. Like, why would he be able to do that now as opposed to earlier? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
in
it makes a little more sense to Teen Nier, because like, oh, now he's 21 instead of 16.
Right.
And maybe you don't have the upper body strength to wield like a Zweihander broadsword. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I got to use heavy weapons, it's like, well, I'm never using one-handed swords ever again, because this is the best. This is what I want.
Really?
It's a little bit more Monster Hunter to me. Yep.
Oh god, yeah, I forgot that.
I used heavy weapons almost exclusively when I upon first unlocking them.
Spears.
I used Phoenix Dagger literally as soon as I got it. I upgraded it and never switched to anything else. So.
Yeah,
and that's a one-handed sword. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I got the Phoenix Spear really early on, and that was me sorted. So there you go.
I eventually got. I used the Labyrinth song for a lot of it, but then I switched to the. Before unlocking that one, I used the. I think it's called the Bad Axe or the Evil Axe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I had an axe two-handed weapon that I used for a lot of the game, but before unlocking the Minotaur sword. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I want to go back to Dad Nier, though, because I think, like, what Zach's saying is really important, because, there was so much chatter about, like, no Dad Nier or anything like that, and, yeah, there are so many things about younger Nier that, like, work so much better for me in the story, and, like, in particular, lots of different things. Like, obviously, like, as a kid, he's struggling with money more, and it just kind of makes more natural sense. And then he grows. Like, there's a very, like, Dad Nier is kind of grizzled and grumpy throughout, whereas, like, Teen Nier to Adult Nier, like, Teen Nier is very naive, and, like, that's another thing. Like, Dad Nier didn't understand things like how to make money and how to buy things and how to do things, whereas it makes more sense with the younger Nier. And then the time skip happens, and the kind of change from this naive, carefree, over-worried boy to this, like, you know, I'm 22 years old now, and, like, I want to kill all the shades. But also he's extremely kind. Like, he's developed this kind of kindness over time that it feels very earned. And weird segue, I guess not a weird segue, but, like, linking to Facade and to, like, the younger Nier protagonist and Emil, I guess. One of the things that was basically completely written out of the game, like, it's obvious in the original Nier that Kaine is intersex, but it's not at all obvious in the original Nier that Emil is gay, and it's a lot more obvious this time around.
Oh yeah, I think both of them are quite in love with Nier, the character.
Maybe. I don't know if I totally buy the romance with Kaine and Nier at all.
I think it's somewhat one-sided, but I think that Kaine cares about Nier and Emil is in love with Nier.
Emil is. Oh yeah. I agree with that notion, but yeah, Emil is absolutely in love with Nier, and in the original, like, well, the Western release anyway, because I think it was intact in the Japanese Replicant. Like, it was completely written out. And I guess it kind of makes sense in context because, you know, Dad Nier is like 42 and Emil looks like a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
But Emil, that's also like hundreds of years old. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like a Doctor Who problem.
Well, yeah. Explaining a little kid having adult romantic feelings by having them be hundreds of years old is a JRPG move that I never like.
No,
yeah,
indeed.
I don't think like I don't know if that was the reason it was removed. I just think it's a shame, really, because like the way that it's changed and the way that it was in the original and the way that it is now in Replicant, like, is so important to Emil.
Yeah.
Like, it really changes like how it changes him as a character, but also like makes so much of his like personal struggles, his development throughout the game and through like everything so much more important. Like it's
Emil
a
and Dad
really
Nier.
special.
Emil and Dad Nier. That's like some Zeus Ganymede vibes that I don't love in an RPG.
Yeah, but it works really well here. I think, it's just so endearing.
I mean, we've said it already, but I totally agree that the Dad Nier makes way less sense. Was created for a Western audience that loved games like, I guess like BioShock and Mass Effect, like the example I used before, and was a somewhat misguided choice by the developers. Teen Nier makes way more sense, and I don't know if I want to say I'm glad they strictly went with it for the remake, but I think it was just the right call.
They did a good job with it.
And giving Dad Nier a cameo in the DLC is a good nod.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
The voice actor did a great job in the original. Like, I wasn't, and it's funny because like I knew that it existed when I played the original Nier, but it didn't, like, none of those things that Alana talked about like that don't really make sense, except for maybe like, I don't know, if he's a replicant that was just created and doesn't know how to do money. I don't know. I mean, I can maybe try to reason my way out of it, but like those things didn't really occur to me. But like now, like I can't see it any other way having played both.
And again, this is me not being privy to a decade of discussions on online forums about this game, but like, are we led to believe that the events of this game or a version of the events of this game have happened hundreds of times?
I don't think that Nier is as cyclical as Automata is.
No, but interestingly,
yeah.
Nier Gestalt, which is the Dad Nier version, and Nier Replicant are both apparently canon.
Yes.
Like they take place at two different times. So I don't really know how that makes sense. They've never tried to make that make sense as far as I'm aware. But
yeah, I'm glad they haven't either, because like that's another thing that Yoko Taro does. It's like all of these endings could be canon as well. Like, you don't have to.
Yeah, he picked an uncommon ending from Drakengard to be the canon ending that leads to Nier.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that the other endings didn't happen either. So, it's just it's almost like something that like he's almost like taking the piss a little bit. Like, why are you trying to like make sense of everything so much? Like, just let it happen. And it's like,
and also, to be fair, I mean, endings A, B, and C are almost the same in terms of what happens to Nier the character. It's just you have to go through them each time to get more context, like understanding the speech of the shades after ending A, and getting additional scenes with Devil and Popula after ending B, and other parts of the game as well after ending B. But like at the end of all of them, Nier executes the Shadow Lord, but then in B and C he also has to defeat Kaine, and after she goes berserk and Tyran starts to take over her. But after you do that 3 times, after you do endings A, B, and C of which also involve killing Kaine, and if you have unlocked every weapon in the game, which is a total of 33 of them, several of which you get in the main story, but some of which you have to do side quests or do some exploration for, and I definitely used a non-spoiler guide to help me find a couple of them. You get the option to, instead of killing Kaine, you get the option to take her place. And and this will go into the memory core of the whole universe and erase the memory of Nier from existence, but Kaine will survive. And in her memory, she was the person that defeated the Shadow Lord and rescued Yona. But in doing so, again, with the context of erasing the memory of Nier from the world, they do the thing that Nier Automata is also famous for, and force you to delete your save file. And that leads to ending E, the circumstances of which are sometimes really exciting, but ultimately I find a little puzzling. Let's talk about ending E. To unlock ending E, first you have to unlock all of A, B, C, D, and then start a new game, but naming Nier a different name than in your original file. So I named my Nier Retro in the original file, and I named him Nier in this new file, because That's something I do sometimes for games that I know I'm going to podcast about later. And starting this up, you play through the very beginning of the game again, but after you defeat the lizard boss around, I don't know, maybe like a third of the way through chapter 1, there's a part where Kaine is woken up from almost dies and is woken up from consciousness. But in that scene where Kaine wakes up, she wakes up in her own bed with the events of this new beginning being a dream, and it takes you to the events after ending D, where Nier's memory has been erased from the world, and now you're playing as Kaine. So what do we think about this part of the game? It's cool controlling Kaine, but I'm not sure I love everything they do in ending E. Let's talk about it.
I think I do love everything they do in ending E, but I want to talk about controlling Kaine first.
Sure.
Because it's delightful. Oh my goodess.
Yeah. She's amazing.
It actually kind of reminded me, like, I've been playing the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade DLC recently. It is like the fast pace of that sort of reminds me of playing as Kaine. Like, playing as Kaine is just a delight. Like, I want a game where I can play as Kaine. I don't actually think ending E opens up some, like, different timeline, and maybe it does, who knows, it's Yoko Taro. But if it does, I want it to be a timeline that is like a year later where Kaine has to deal with something different, and I play as her the whole game. Because controlling her is like the most fun I've ever had playing a Nier game. It was more fun than playing as 2B. Just like how quick she moves, the power of it. Like, I mean, like, it was so intuitive in a way that playing as Nier or Dad Nier or whoever was not. I thought it was just amazing. And I really wanted to go visit all the areas, and I couldn't. Like, I couldn't go to the junkyard. I tried. They wouldn't let me. Which is interesting, because if you try to visit the junkyard, they say, like, the robots are getting out of control when you try to visit the junkyard, which I thought was cool. But yeah, I mean, I love controlling Kaine.
Yeah, she has the power of the heavy weapons and the speed of a one-hand weapon, and is if just as mobile, if not more so, than Nier himself. But going to one of the places you are allowed to go is the Forest of Myth. And interestingly, when you go there in part 2 of the game as Nier, one of the trees there, like, is some kind of, like, giant hard drive, and describes itself as a receptor of memory that contains all memories, but it's starting to be corrupted and the memories are starting to be eaten, which is one of the game's visual novel segments. Again, I mean, this is true of Nier Automata and Replicant. There's visual novel segments and that are completely dialogue driven, and also sort of top-down shooter segments. Like, I didn't realize that Replicant / Gestalt also had overhead gameplay with enemies shooting red balls at you. I thought that was strictly part of Automata, but how wrong I was.
Well, like, Replicant does it more often as well, because you've got, like, the Diablo section underneath the mansion, you've got the Resident Evil section in the mansion when you go and see Emil the first time.
I never made the Resident Evil connection, but you're so right.
Yeah, and they bring back a semi-Resident Evil version in the Ghost ship.
Yes, they do, yeah. And well, that's more like I guess almost like a Metroidvania or point-and-click adventure game, isn't it? Where you just go into doors and stuff like that.
Point-and-click adventure, I would say.
It's cool. Yeah, whatever. Like, they like to play with genre all the time. Like, it's a lot sometimes, because, like, they don't always totally work.
I mean,
like,
I really like shmups, which is why when I played through ending B in Automata, it was about 75% hacking.
Wait until you get to the new raid and the Final Fantasy 14 Nier series.
Oh, I haven't.
There's a little schmupping there.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that. When I was fighting,
I'm still talking Nier.
When I was fighting the Nier credits in Automata, I got all the way to the German localization team before I died.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I got this time around. I did as well. And I was like, wait, don't I have to die at some point?
I didn't know that, so I was fighting for my life.
Yeah, me too.
In that ending,
It's been 4 years. Do I need to die?
Yeah, back to Replicant. Basically, you make the connection that this tree was not just metaphorically or in a mystic sense calling itself a receptor of memory. It really is the connection to the world's hard drive in this universe. And in the ending E, as Kaine, you find an opening in the tree to revisit it, and it's kind of like the one of the tower areas or one of the Adam Eve areas in Nier Automata. This is an area very, very heavily influenced by being made after Nier Automata. And the enemies you fight are reminiscent of the hacking sequences at times. It's you fight clones of Kaine, and then go into a heavily sort of black-white aesthetic area that is kind of like a hacking sequence in Nier Automata, and you end up fighting a number of Kaine's memories, leading to that lizard shade that dominated her storyline in the first part of Nier Replicant, and eventually that sort of again, the context is sort of that this repository of memory that you encountered earlier in the game as Nier is the last place where Nier's data is. Like there is a backup of Nier and Vice in this memory tree hard drive that is the sort of missing piece that Kaine is struggling to remember but can't. Am I off base?
That's accurate.
Okay.
That's correct.
These games get so crazy about endings and truth and messing around with the player's expectations that I'm always concerned that I'm missing something. Like, I know this game is smarter than I am, so sometimes I struggle trying to take it in.
And ending E is so different to any of the other endings in Replicant anyway. Like, it's definitely closer to what you'd expect in Automata. So if you've like had the distance from Automata and you're literally, you've done endings A, B, C, and D in fairly quick succession, then you're gonna not expect that. So yeah, it's totally understandable that you would get it a bit confused, but you didn't. So
right. Well, I mean, I thought I was mostly understanding it as I was playing it, but because I know there's a lot to this game, and Yoko Taro plays with endings and expectations and drama in ways that I'm always surprised by. I was always slightly worried there was something I wasn't getting, but at the end, Kaine confronts this. She even meets Emil, tracks her down and becomes your companion. And I think he even mentions that they were Team Kaimil, right?
I love that.
I'm like, oh, that's cute. I would have played a whole game as Kaimil. That's all right.
I would love that.
But it ends with the tower that you're playing through sort of erupting through the ground and then blossoming like one of those lunar tears. That is a white flower motif that happens a lot in the game, with Kaine sort of embracing a newly born Nier, with the I guess with the idea that he's come back and he's remembered again. And after you do this and roll credits again, they restore your deleted memory, which conceptually is kind of great because you went into the deepest memory bank in the universe and restored a lost memory, and then that restores your save file. But I think that also lessens the impact of forcing a player to delete their save file, because Yoko Taro knew in 2010 that people hate the idea of deleting their save file, because that save file there, that's a trophy, that's a memory, that's the whole experience of you playing the game, and people hate losing their save files when they play video games. I please don't tell me you're an exception to this, because that's a lie. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting psychological thing. Like it's like, how many times do we actually go back and play those games? Like, almost never. But like,
yeah,
the idea of losing our save file is something that bothers us, because like, it's like I don't know, like, nobody wants to believe the Rashomon effect is real, right? Like, like our memories are not set in stone, so like, we know that our save file is this thing that we can go back to, that is real, that is tangible, and it's gone. I think it's interesting from like a gameplay perspective.
I haven't seen Rashomon in a while, but that's not how I remember it.
That joke will never get old.
No, the Simpsons did it first. I know, but that's a perfect joke. But yeah, I think that, like, in both Gestalt and Replicant and Automata, like, forcing a player to delete their save file for the sake of the game is incredibly powerful and devastating. And I feel like why did they let us take it back? Like, why did they back away from that ledge a little bit in the remake? That's my concern about ending E.
Yeah, I had a similar concern. I still kind of do, and I still don't love that I get it back, but like, I'm still trying to work my way through my feelings about it. Like, I'm getting there, but like, I'll be really honest, I did not like Route E or Ending E at all when I reviewed this game. So like, I'm changing a little bit just because like, I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I think it's really clever in what it does with Kaine as a character in particular. And like, throughout the game we've used like throughout this podcast even we've used like ways to describe her as like unapologetic, and she is very much her own person. And like there is a line at the end of Automata that I remembered the other day, and it was like oh god, it's something like, you're not handed life, you have to work it out yourself, or something like that. And that is essentially what Kaine's doing throughout this entire ending, right? She's like making her own decisions because she's like, no, screw what the world wants to happen. I don't care whether the last Gestalt or the last Replicant has gone. I want to make the best of what I can make of it. And so, like, I like this part of it. I like what they do with Kaine. I like that she gets back a version of Nier. It's not the version of Nier that she... It is a version of Nier that she cared for, but she doesn't care about that. She's got like a figure to hold on to, kind of thing, and she's physically holding on to
it. If we view this Nier as a save data backup, which is sort of how I interpret it, we don't know when that save data took place.
Yeah, exactly. And like, but she doesn't care about whether that is. She just wants Nier. That's it. That's all she wants. She wants Nier, and she doesn't... And she's got Emil there with her as well, so everything is back to normal for her because she's got what she wants. And, at the end of the day, like, I guess, why does it matter if everything's going to go...
It's like she knew something was missing, and that was bothering her, and she was struggling with it, and she didn't know what she wanted until she was fighting all of those robots and memories in the tree, and until, it became sort of a desperate fight for her.
That's just more because of the memory loss, I guess. Yeah, but I think she'd have done it regardless.
And there's a memory loss segment in the greatest manga of all time, One Piece, and when
hot take,
right? When sort of a big turning point happens, and all of these people suddenly remember all their lost loved ones that had disappeared from memory. There's just an incredible amount of emotional release, and maybe that's one of the scenes from the anime that I rewatch and cry. But like for the idea for a memory to disappear and come back is powerful. In that video game players never want to delete their save files. I don't know. Like I'm still not sure how I feel. I love the concept of it and relating to what they're doing in Ending E. But I just think it's more powerful to not have a way to go back from that, even though now I can go back and try to upgrade all the weapons, which is something I'm kind of interested in, and definitely I'm definitely also not interested in.
I don't care how many words you have for item drop plus 30 or whatever. Don't do it. I love Ending E. I watched it again earlier today, and it's funny because like Alana told me like what it was before she wrote a review, because she knows I'm a huge Nier fan. I was like, that sounds stupid. And then I played it, and then I watched it again, and I actually think that I love it. I think I like it almost as much as Ending E and Automata, because, like, to me, like, Ending D in original Nier, like, going back to it from Automata, like, has, like, maybe 10% of the impact that it has in Automata. And I think that's, like, sort of purposeful. Like, and like I can imagine in 2010, if I was playing the original Nier, like, oh my gosh, I'm like deleting my save file for my friend. Like that's like a big deal. But like Automata like ups that ante like so much, and it makes it so thematically rich in a way that it's like you're deleting your save file for anyone. This idea, like it sort of like like what seemed to me at the time like the thematic conclusion of like these two games. Like here's what Taro's really saying: like you have to sacrifice yourself for people you don't know and you don't necessarily like, which is not at all what Nier does, right? But I think he sort of complicates it a little bit in Ending E here, by saying like, look, just because like these people committed acts of evil, and I actually don't think he's actually arguing they committed acts of evil. They committed acts of love, essentially, right? Like they committed acts of love. Kaine committed acts of love for Nier. Nier committed acts of love for Yona, and sure, maybe the consequences of those things were evil, but I think that ultimately it's like thematically saying like those acts of love still matter, because Emil still says like, we may have made mistakes in the past, but this like we can still move forward in love for each other. And I think that it's really interesting because it almost talks back to the Automata ending, whereas the Automata ending almost argues like, hey, like you just need to like sacrifice yourself for everyone, but that sort of discounts the idea of love being something that really matters, because like you can't love everybody, of course. And so I think that to me it is a natural thematic push forward, and like because I think ending D is not that impactful now that we know what Automata is, like to me, like the getting it back is almost like more interesting to me now because Automata's already done what Automata's done.
Now I do feel a little bit about ending E with that context, but yeah, I think I would feel different about it if I had played old Nier, then Automata, then this. But because I did Automata first, then this, I'm thinking of this like, well, like why are they letting you walk back from that?
Well, I don't think so, because I did, and I felt like you, like, and I still sort of do. Like, I think I feel very uncomfortable with it, and maybe that's just me. Like, I'm fine to feel uncomfortable with it because I do like a lot of what it's doing and a lot of like everything that Zach said. Yeah, I can see it absolutely, but like, it's really interesting because like. The reception to Ending E. So Ending E is actually also in Grimoire Nier, so it's actually existed for ever since Grimoire Nier
and Grimoire Nier is a book.
It's a companion book,
right.
Yeah, that has like a bunch of short stories, interviews, and things like that in there. So it's always existed, and it was a very divisive piece of, like, it was very divisive. Like, a lot of people didn't like it, and then since Replicant has come out and lots of people have beaten it, I've seen near universal praise for Ending E, which is really interesting to me because they work it in a little bit differently as well. But yeah, like I'm still working through my thoughts. So like, I don't know whether it matters whether you've played or in what order, because obviously Zach, you played Automata first and then played Gestalt.
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's not. It's just it's not going to work for everybody, and like I'd rather it made me feel really uncomfortable, to be honest, than if I walked away from it completely satisfied. Oh yeah, that was perfect. But like, yeah, I think you just need to learn to take something from it, essentially. And I think what I'm getting from it is like that it's some kind of I'm deliberately saving things because we're recording this before something I've written goes up, so I'm trying to like
the thing you write will go up before this, my friend.
It will, yeah. Okay, so well, I don't.
No. Please plug it. That's something we absolutely should talk about.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I talk about my like conflicted feelings with Ending E and how like I came to resolve most of them in this piece, and like. But it's not the center of it. Like, the center of the piece that I've written is about, like, both Emil and Kaine as existing as queer characters in a world where, like, essentially they have to find their own place in life and their own place in the world, and how that reflected on me as a person replaying it this year. And, like, I think Ending E, the way I got around it was realizing that actually, you know what, like, how often are we, like, Kaine has spent her entire life being bullied and abused and tormented, and she puts herself through so much throughout the probably more than, like, I don't want to say more than Nier, maybe she does though. She puts herself through so much in the game. Like, she's been beaten by kids, she's lost her grandmother, she's possessed by a shade willingly after having her leg and her arm chopped off, right? And then she's like isolated, she pushes people away, she has to confront Hook, who is the shade that killed the grandmother, and all the shades have fairy tale names. Like, she has to go through things over and over again. In Route B, she has to relive all of it again while she's petrified under this text adventure. And then at that campfire scene, which is new in Route B, like, she like comes out to Emil and is like, my body's different, they bullied me for this is that. And this is her kind of like starting to rebuild herself and rebuild every piece of like her emotion and her like find her own place in the world, basically. Like, she's very much trying to do that anyway, but like there she's like trying to learn to love herself and come to terms with who she is and where her place in the world. And then like getting to Route E is like her fully acting on that and going like, no, screw the world. Just because I've been told all my life I do not deserve this, I will take it and do what I want with it. And like the interesting consequence of Ending E is like, regardless of whether she's happy, all the replicants, all the gestalts are gone at this point, like, or they're going. The project will never be fulfilled, and in fact the ending says that they're all dead in 3 years' time. So like, you know, but in that one moment for her, it's so important that she's happy to her, right? And that's all that matters, right? Like, it's a really valuable lesson, I think. And like, as much as I don't love getting my save file back because I'm like, it's slightly different, but okay. And like, I feel like Emil coming back, maybe. I love Emil, but like, it was a little odd. And the androids, obviously, the boy and the girl are like obvious references because the voices of 2B and 9S are playing those two androids that you fight or you see inside the tree. There's so many different elements to that route that have me mixed, but like almost every single interaction with Kaine, her fighting herself over and over again, like she has done for her entire life. Right. Like she has to fight Hook again, she has to fight all these other copies, she has to relive another text adventure. Everything at once is just bombarding her, and it's like pushing through. It's like a breakthrough. She's gone through so much trauma and she just breaks through it and is like, no, that's it. And that's what I take from ending it. And I don't know if everybody will, but like, yeah, it's helped me accept the ending and a lot of other things as well, which you can go read the piece if you want.
I mean, two things. One is Kaine is brilliant and she deserves that ending. And also your piece is brilliant, so everybody should go read it. It's really good.
Yep, just check out the RPGFan.com's features section. And what's the name of the title of the piece? It's about to go up as we're recording this.
It is called Queer Replicant.
Got it.
Identity and Sexuality through Kaine and Emil in Nier Replicant.
Excellent. Thank you for that analysis and for your piece, Alana, which I have not read yet because I very, very rarely I don't do much editing for RPG Fan, so I very rarely read pieces before they officially go up. But I'm looking forward to reading your piece in its completion once it posts, which is again after we're recording this, but it's definitely out now by the time that this is released. But again, I don't want to comment beyond what you said, Alana. But just looking at a larger view of Nier Replicant, this is a game about sort of about outcasts and suffering and repetition that goes incredible emotional moments that I was thrilled and surprised by constantly playing the game, but they make you work for them because I mean playing through the part 2 of the storyline 3 times minimum. It's not as fun the third time. It's like
yeah.
Even if the first time it's as fun as eating a tub of ice cream, the third time's as fun as eating your third tub of ice cream. I was really I was slagging a little bit, but by the third run through of that game, and things like we alluded to this earlier. But upgrading weapons does have those story rewards and gameplay rewards by making your weapons stronger. But grinding for materials to do so is a complete drag, and that you have to travel 10 minutes to the top of a bridge over to the junkyard just to upgrade the weapon is also a drag. Like there's and Yoko Taro knows this. He's making players or the designers of this game made players suffer to get to the good parts because part of this game is about suffering, is at least my takeaway.
Yeah, no, I think it's accurate. I mean, I think that, like, I don't know. I mean, he likes to take things that are, like, gamified and make them, like, real parts of the game and, like, ways that, like, are an effort to show the annoyance that the character would go through. Like, in Automata, like, I don't know, it takes a while to get the vending machines to open up, right? For the fast travel. Here, it takes a while for the boat to open up. But, I mean, side quests in this game, like, I don't know, this time around I did maybe, like, 50% of them. I wasn't growing any, I don't know, pale moonflowers or whatever the heck it was.
Yeah, geez, there's a whole botany system in this game.
Yeah.
That you never have to interact with at all.
0 out of 10 would not recommend.
It's way more. It's way more complicated than being a botanist in FF14, or even growing hybrid flowers in Animal Crossing. Like they put this whole gardening nonsense in this game that takes a long time and gets you nothing but a few flowers and a trophy.
It's good money. If you grow wheat or rice, it's really good quick money. But by the time you're in the second half of the game, like money is kind of no object.
You don't really need money in this game as long as you do.
I did side quests for money, and that gave me a lot. And then I sold robot parts for money a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's again, like, they celebrate tedium in this game and to a degree, force players through tedium in a way that is very deliberate, and I did not always love. But
yeah, like,
but
you're like
The junk heap is maybe not my favorite area to run through because I've done it a whole lot in the last
me too.
year.
I
and
think
Yeah.
that was the one I went through the most as well.
Yeah, because that's where you get all your alloys and that. Yeah, and like the tedium of the side quest is like, I think it's probably worse here than it is in Automata. Like, I think Automata got some similar criticisms, and like, but there's so much back and forth in particular in this one, and like the fast travel, it's fast travel, sure, but you still have to walk to Facade from the boat, or you have to walk to the temple. Like, it's not like there are vending machines everywhere, or like your transporters everywhere. But like, I think. It's really frustrating to me because like it's illustrating a point which I love, and like, you know, like there's a really good quote actually that encapsulates it, and I can't remember the specifics, but I think it's after one of the mermaid sequences, and the postman or the guy with the red bag like dies, and Nier says, I'll miss their arguments.
Them
and
arguing
like,
is just a hallmark of the great writing in this game.
It is great, and it's like, but you know, why are you helping people out? Well, because you're a person, and you're a nice person, and you're empathizing, and you're helping people, right? Like, I think that's what the side quests act to do, right? They're like, I think one of the comparisons I made in my review, like, I know you said that like Automata and Replicant were quite similar to you, but I think you were going for more gameplay. Right. I still think, even though they've got thematic links, I think they're quite different in that like Automata definitely deals with like grander concepts a bit more, but like Replicant deals with people more directly. Like, I know, again, Automata's message is like, give yourself up to save everybody because empathy is universal, and the same message is here in to some ways, but like in Replicant, like, you're doing things to help people, to make them happy, and then ultimately at the end, you know, Nier gives himself up to save Kaine because that's what he wants. Kaine brings back Nier because that's what she wants, and she wants to make herself happy. Like, you're doing everything in this game to like help people out. Like, think about the lighthouse side quest, which is like extremely famous. Like, it's so incredible, and like there's so many choices in those like quests where actually it doesn't change anything. Like, whatever you say, whatever you say, but I still like, I sat on some of those decisions for 10 minutes. I'm like, no, Alana, you're reviewing a video game. Why are you having a mental breakdown over whether you're going to tell someone that that their husband's died or not? Why are you going to lie to them?
You can change it, and she reacts basically the same way, which I did.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about the lighthouse lady or the red bag lady?
That's the red bag lady. But you can also do the similar thing with the lighthouse lady.
Right,
like, you can tell her that the husband wasn't writing the letter, and it's like, why am I agonizing so much? But I'm agonizing because I give a shit, basically, like, every time. It doesn't matter whether they're going to react differently.
With the red bag woman, the first time I ran through it, during ending A, I guess, or before ending A, I told her that her husband died, and she was completely devastating, and it was devastated, and it's gut-wrenching. And the second time, you know, me with my dumb gamer brain was thinking, I'll say the other thing this time, and it'll be different, and maybe it'll be better. And it's worse because she assumed that her husband left her because of something she did, which is worse. And again, this game, it didn't affect the rest of the game, but it's still just a very powerful dialogue moment. And
they're just snippets of humanity, aren't they?
Yeah,
right?
And also, like, again, going to the point of this game not really having heroes and villains, and Nier, you know, doing awful things because he's lost sight of anything other than rescuing his sister. It's like, of course you want to rescue your sister. Of course you want to help people that are in front of you. But you also, like, wipe out almost an entire town when you defeat the orb shade in the Aerie. And
that's always the part that gets me in this game.
And
Emil's reaction.
Yeah, and Emil breaks down for having killed an entire village, and then Nier tells me it's okay. We did it to kill a shade, and we're alive, so it's okay. And but with the knowledge that these shades were humans, that makes it worse. And also, when you have the shade dialogue and before endings B and C, and you go to the area before that event happens, you hear shades saying, well, we're most of the population of the town now. We're pretending to be humans. We just want to live like humans. Mm-hmm. And the replicants in the area are paranoid jerks, while the shades in the area are just trying to live lives like humans again.
They actually sell you like goods.
Yeah, they sell you gear. And like a little kid, and there's an older sister shade is protecting a younger boy that I think is a replicant. But you murder all of them, and it's. That's a gut punch. The one that gets me the most, though, is I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but I have to talk about this scene before we shut it down.
BP?
What?
BP?
BP. The robot.
Oh God.
Khalil.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
I was not thinking about that one. I'm thinking of a scene with no dialogue at all. After Emil dies, you sort of
God.
you sprint into an empty hallway, and and Nier and Kaine are just so emotionally spent that they just sit there wheezing for a while. Then Kaine punches and kicks Nier a couple times, then brings her head close to him like they're about to kiss or something, then breaks away, and they both just say, "Let's go," and they move on to kill the Shadow Lord. It's like, what? Like, people just being emotionally drained and expressing it and expressing their grief in those different ways, and was like, I couldn't believe the acting in that scene.
Oh God, the voice acting, and even in the original, it was great. But like, it's just as good here.
The voice work.
Laura Bailey is a goddess. Let's be honest.
The voice work and the
Yes.
the voice work and the body language in that scene were just incredible.
Huh?
I met Laura Bailey at E3 a few years ago.
What?
Yep.
You did.
Yep. No,
yes.
excuse me?
You did.
Yes, Steph and I did. We were interviewing people for the Telltale Batman game, and she's Catwoman.
Yeah.
So
We used to be friends.
Exactly. It's the chat.
All right, would you say a long time ago we used to be friends, but haven't done lately at all? Come on now.
Thanks,
Trevor.
Veronica.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. If I'm quoting lyrics from the opening theme to Veronica Mars, maybe we are nearing the end of the episode.
Hey.
But anyway, thank you so much, Alana and Zach, for allowing me to express myself after I had many complicated thoughts and feelings after playing Nier Replicant for the first time.
Don't worry, I did too. Thank you.
It's normal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This is a cool, brilliantly written game that is frustrating at parts, but that frustration is deliberate on the parts of the creators, which makes my feelings even more complicated, I guess. But I don't regret crossing it off the list, especially that I'm able to podcast about it with you guys, because this was this was both a great discussion, I feel, and also cathartic, I definitely feel.
Yeah, I'm ready to do it all again with Nier Reincarnation and whatever else they do next,
boy.
and probably replay both of these games again at some point and have another identity crisis. Let's go.
Go read about like all the theory crafting about like the lunar tier and like destruction seeds online. Don't worry, there'll be another Nier.
There's this game goes deep. I think Nier Automata is a somewhat better game for reasons we don't need to get into, but that game goes deep too, and the way these two games connect just makes me that much more excited for whatever Yoko Taro does next, even if it's just another raid in Final Fantasy XIV.
Well, I was going to say, like, just to cut it off there, right? Like, if Nier Replicant and that last raid in Final Fantasy XIV can make a whole swathe of people go, I want to play Drakengard now. Yeah. Like, you've done something right.
There are a whole lot of Drakengard references in both, I will say that.
I mentioned my somewhat disinterest in Drakengard earlier this episode, but I have not wanted to play Drakengard more than when I was going through the various endings in this game. That is the truth.
I think the Nier raid, the last one, I haven't done it myself because I'm nowhere near it, but like I've obviously sat and watched it, and like even I was sitting there watching it and was like, oh, okay, this is where we're going now. Here we go. Those bells.
Pumpet's Bunker was the last thing I did in FF14 before going on in indeterminate hiatus on it. But whatever Yoko Taro does, that is a devious but brilliant man, and I am interested in whatever his next endeavor is. But let's talk about our next endeavors at Retro Encounter. Next week, we are doing 2 episodes in a row, bringing back the Essential 10 in a set of episodes we're calling the Essential 10 2. We are going to add 10 more games to our RPG Fans Retro Encounter Hall of Fame over 2 more episodes. There will be arguments, there will be stress, but we will eventually arrive at a list of 10.
And so lose 4 staff members in the process.
Yes. No one mentioned that.
Well, that's you two then, at least. Bye.
Yep. We'll see. And I already know a little bit about how those episodes went, and I already have regrets. But Please look forward to those two in the next 2 weeks. And after the Essential 10-2, we are doing 2 episodes on Hakuoki, which is a otome game, a female-centric visual novel set in, I believe post-feudal Japan. The Shinsengumi are involved. So I think 19th century Japan. I haven't done all the research into it yet, but we are doing 2 episodes on Hakuoki later this month, and the panel will be all women. So please look forward to the first otome game coverage on Retro Encounter. But also on Retro Encounter, a game that's a little bit more something I'm used to, we are doing 2 episodes on Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, the artist formerly known as Shin Megami Tensei 3, in August, which I think will bookend episode 300, the way that we have it set up right now. So episode 300 will be its own special thing, and we will also have 2 episodes on Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne coming in August. But listeners, if you want to message us about Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne or Hakuoki or Nier Replicant or Veronica Mars, the best way to do so is to email us at retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on RPG Fans message boards, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Twitter page, our Discord server, our YouTube channel, our Twitch channel, something streaming every day on Twitch. Please interact with RPG Fan however you see fit. Another great way to interact is to listen to our other fine podcasts. Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness. Rhythm Encounter mostly every 2 weeks about RPG music. And Phoenix Edge usually every week mostly about current events. You can review Retro Encounter and those other 3 on Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, or whatever listening venue you choose. Please give us feedback. We love feedback, but how do you give us feedback? As individuals and not a group, let's tell them, starting with you, Zach.
You can tell me what you think about Nier or all CW shows, including Veronica Mars and Gilmore Girls, at zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can message me on Discord at zachw.
Now, hold up a minute. Veronica Mars was the greatest UPN show of all time before joining the CW family.
That's true, but
so
also Gilmore Girls was on
the WB before
WB.
CW. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, it's CW is the the Megazord of those 2 bodies fusing together.
Right. I'll also take emails about Buffy. That's all good.
Sure. Yeah. Another WB classic. Were all of those starring blonde women? No. The Gilmore Girls are brunette.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, strong female leads. Look to the CW. But speaking of strong female leads, Alana, how can listeners find you?
Oh, God, why did you do that?
I couldn't resist.
That's fine. You can find me on Twitter at Alana Hagues, or you can find me on the RPG Fan Discord as Alana.
And listeners, if you want to message me about any of the thing that we've discussed today, especially Gilmore Girls or Veronica Mars, you can find me on Twitter at the Real Monsoon, most of the time at Evoker for Dogs, other times, and I'm also Monsoon Mike on RPG Fans Discord. I'm emotionally spent right now, but not quite as emotionally spent after ending D, let's say. Listeners, thank you, good night, and good luck.